Hi, welcome back to my channel. These are the best books that I read in 2019. They are going to be from number 10 to number 1, so my 10th favorite to my first favorite, and we're starting off with a genre that I don't usually read, and that is a romance novel called Love from A to Z. Love from A to Z was super cute. Like I said, I don't usually read romance, but I feel like my working idea of whether or not I like a romance is if it gives you that feeling of like warm, fuzzy, shy, blushing, edge of your seat, like, oh, are they gonna, that you get from like the first stages of a relationship. And this definitely gave me that. It is about two Muslim teenagers who are one is just graduated and one's about to graduate. Adam, who I think is Chinese American, and Zainab, who is from Dubai but she lives in America. Adam is a converted Muslim, and they are both going to Dubai to meet up with their families over a break, and they sort of first encounter each other on the plane, and Adam realizes that he and this girl, Zainab, both have a Marvels and Oddities journal, which is sort of referencing a quote from an old story that they both love, that talks about the sort of the wonders of the marvels of the world and like the stresses of the oddities of the world. So the journals are meant to help them notice the great things in life and the stressful things in life. And Adam tends to notice marvels more, and Zainab tends to notice oddities more. Zainab is very politically minded. She is really active in fighting against oppression and stereotypes, especially towards her own Muslim groups. And Adam is, even though he's a converted Muslim, he is very kind, he's very sensitive, but he doesn't really worry about those sorts of things. So it's sort of these two ways of looking at the world that come together, and it's very sweet. It's a very healthy relationship, and it also deals with a lot of things that aren't just the romance. So I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. And the audiobook was great. All right, next up is a cute little book called The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. I thought Hiro Arikawa was a man, but actually it's a woman, and that's because Hiro is usually a male name, but it's written by a woman. This is about, it's just a sweet little book about a man who's trying to find a home for his cat, because he, for reasons, won't be able to take care of it pretty soon. And it's really sweet, and it's gonna make you cry, but it's more sweet than tear jerking. It's not necessarily like every other animal book out there, although there are some elements of it. And it's told from the cat's perspective, which is super cute, and like the way that the cat looks at the world is really charming. And it's a super easy, low stress read. I really recommend it to anybody who loves animals, especially if you love cats. I love them most of the time. Gigi. Anyway, but yeah, give this a go. It's pretty short, and it's just really nice, and it's very fall themed on the cover, so I read it in the fall. Next, I am including a whole trilogy in this slot. Don't judge me. Hey, it was released as one book, supposedly, and that is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, not including The Hobbit, because I had read The Hobbit before 2019 anyway. These are not a reread for me, really. I properly read them for the first time this year, and I loved them. I gave The Fellowship of the Ring 4 stars, Two Towers 5, Return of the King 5, and I'm not going to explain them to you, but I just really loved the writing style of it. There's nothing can compare to the world building that Tolkien puts into his books, and also the friendships that develop in this just really feel very strong. I especially love Sam as a character. I think he might be my favorite in the books, even though the Pippin and Merry are my favorite from the movies. So yeah, if you haven't read Lord of the Rings, Why not? Why are you denying yourself that pleasure? Number 8 is Six of Crows, which I don't own yet, but I do plan on buying it. I'm gonna buy that like fancy one with like the shiny red graphics on it. But anyway, Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is one of the few YAs that I've liked so much enough to give 5 stars. I just really liked the relationships built up in it. I liked the story and the plot, even though that seems to be where people think it's the weakest, but it didn't bother me. And I think that if you just want to find a book that sort of breaks a lot of YA tropes, this is a good one for that. Number 6 is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I have not seen the movie, but I probably should. I'm really excited to finish this, to continue on with this series. This is a sci-fi, probably slightly dystopia novel, which is about a team of researchers that go into this zone that has been taken over by nature, and every other team that has gone into it has disappeared or come back like real messed up in the head. And so this is the 11th expedition to go out there, and it's just really creepy. It's a little bit slow building, so if that bothers you, this isn't for you. But for me, that tension that it just builds like bit by bit by bit, I love that kind of thing. And just that feeling of complete dread that something is going to go terribly wrong is really strong in this book, and I loved it. And the cover is really cool looking, so I'm excited to have this on my shelf. Number 5 is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I listened to this on audiobook, and in my opinion, that should be the only way that you consume this book, because it is told in 2 perspectives. One is the main character, Sadie, and the other one is by a podcast host who is following her story, and the podcast is very podcasty, so with music and sound effects and things like that. And I just think because you're listening to it, because it's a podcast, listening to it is like the best way to go about it. It's also a full cast audiobook, so every character is voiced by a different person, as opposed to one person who just changes their voice kind of for different characters. So it's got really high production value. All of the voices are great. Sadie is about a girl who runs away from home to try and find the man who she thinks killed her younger sister. And it's just about Sadie's journey tracking down this man and the people that she meets along the way. It's very suspenseful. It's really intense. There are a lot of trigger warnings for this. Pedophilia, rape, abuse, violence, just murder, so just be aware of that going in. But it's not really graphic. It's not even not a lot of it actually happens in the book pages. It's just implied. So I don't think it's that hard to read. It didn't make me, well, there's parts that make me want to throw up, but that's just from them relaying what happened. But it was so good, guys. And just the intensity of it, the feeling of authenticity to all of the characters was really strong, and I really want to read more by this author just because she did such a good job. Number 4 is Beartown. This book has been pretty hyped up on BookTube already. I'm here to confirm, in my opinion, that all the hype is earned. It is written by Fredrik Backman, and his writing is just beautiful and lyrical, and he does such a wonderful job at portraying really complex human emotions that you don't even realize that humans have, but when you read him sort of display it or show it, it just makes so much sense. This book, if you don't know, is about a girl who gets raped by a hockey player in a town where their whole life is hockey, is the hockey team. And it's just about how the whole town reacts to it and the sides that they take, and what it means, what loyalty means, and what it means to believe somebody, and what it means to face that kind of choice if you were in the girl's position. It's handled very, very well. Obviously, trigger warnings for rape, but it is so well and thoughtfully and lovingly explored in this book. It definitely made me cry, but it also, every character in it is so complex and so fully realized, even the person who committed the rape. And I think that that's really important to just show what that sort of mentality might look like, I guess, and how people around that person who love that person would react. So I think this is a really important book to read, especially in this Me Too era where we're trying to break down rape culture. This is extremely important, although it is set in Sweden, I think. And so I very highly recommend this book. It was very beautiful. Number 3 on my list goes to a nonfiction book, The Buried. If you watch my Goodreads wrap up, you know probably about this book. The Buried is by Peter Hessler. I really enjoyed this book. It is about a reporter who lives in Egypt during the Arab Spring in the early 2000s when basically Egypt has overthrown their government and they're trying to reorganize their government to be a democracy, and honestly not doing a very good job of it. And the people that Peter Hessler knows and interacts with, it paints such a really colorful, interesting look at Egypt during that time period. There's also an element of archaeology in this because it also looks at Egypt's ancient past with, you know, pharaohs and all of that, and how that connects to, and how it also is disconnected from what's happening there and what has happened there in the more recent modern history of the country. It's very nuanced look because of the different people that he not interviews, but just who he knows. There's his teacher who's teaching him Egyptian Egyptian Arabic. There is his trash collector who is surprisingly intelligent for someone of that position that you would expect. There's also his young friend who is gay, which is challenging in Egypt. And it's just so well explored, and it's also really funny. It doesn't sound like it'd be a funny book, but it's hilarious. The Egyptians kind of have a pretty dark, nihilistic humor, and that is really great. And just the oddities of what he experiences is really fantastic. Obviously take it with a grain of salt because Peter Hessler is American. His wife is Chinese. They have 2 daughters. They must have just like the weirdest cultural confusion, being like Chinese American but growing up in Egypt. Ooh, that's weird. But so he's not Egyptian, so definitely take what he says with a grain of salt, but it is a very interesting, very diverse perspective, and I highly recommend it. And number 2 on my list goes to The Labyrinth of the Spirits. I kept calling this The Labyrinth of the Ancients in some of my videos, and I'm sorry about that. It is called The Labyrinth of the Spirits. The Labyrinth of the Ancients is a dungeon in the mass multiplayer RPG that I play, Final Fantasy XIV online, and I do that dungeon a lot because you run the same content a lot, and so I just kept calling it The Labyrinth of the Ancients. It's not. But this is written by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. He is probably my favorite author, honestly. You've heard me rant about him a lot. This is the 4th book in the series that starts with The Shadow of the Wind, which a lot of people have read, and not many people know it's a series. It is. This book is very, very good. I don't like it as much as the first 2 books, The Shadow of the Wind and The Angel's Game, but it is still amazing. Originally, I gave it 4 stars because there are some elements in it that I recognized as not being as strong, but ultimately I went back and I changed it to 5 because those elements do not reduce the amount of how much I love this book. And it's so good. It's still got his really beautiful, atmospheric, just gorgeous writing that puts you right in the middle of Spain during this very volatile time. It's historical fiction, it's not fantasy, and it follows a girl named Alicia who is basically an agent of a secret division of the government who she's sometimes assassin, sometimes investigator, and she's trying to find out what happened to this politician who went missing recently. And it ends up being a very complicated, very dangerous mystery that she gets involved in. The main character is a badass. She's super cool. It's got a lot of Fermin in it, who is one of my favorite characters with his really hilarious look on the world. And all of the characters and the relationships that have been forming and the stories behind all these characters really come together in this last one, and it's very satisfying. It is quite long. I think this is the longest book I read this year. It's like almost 900 pages, I think. But it's definitely worth it. And just, he's such a good author, and I hope I can find his YA books, because apparently he's written some YA books. I hope I can find them in translation somewhere. And my number one book that I read in 2019 is The Bird King by G. Willow Wilson. G. Willow Wilson is a converted Muslim, and she also has written Alif the Unseen, which I love, and she, I think, is the current writer of Wonder Woman. And she just has a really deep interest in sort of Arabic mythology and history, and her writing is sort of, it's definitely fantasy, but it's a little bit more like magical realism side of things. She just writes books that are unlike anything I have ever read. They're beautiful. The characters in it are fully formed, fully fleshed out, but just the approach that she takes to storytelling, and even the kind of story that she tells, it's always really unique. And so it also kind of makes it hard to summarize. Okay, so this book is about Fatima, who is a concubine in the Sultan of Granada's harem. And Granada was like a part of Spain back when Spain was still Islam. And it's during like the Inquisition and all of that. And so her best friend is a gay map maker in the Sultan's employ. And so when the Inquisition comes, he's in danger because of his sexuality. And so she sets out to save him. He also has a secret in that when he makes maps, if he changes the map, it will change the physical landscape around them. So she teams up with him and also a jinn, or a genie, but a jinn, to save him. And they're trying to find this island that's sort of a mythical island where the Bird King rules, where they think they'll be safe. And that synopsis doesn't sound that unique, but it's so unusual, the things that they go through. The jinn is really hilarious. He's a great character. And my favorite thing was the relationship between Fatima and Hassan, the map maker, because even though he's gay and they're not like lovers, they love each other as friends so much. And it's even beyond what I would consider friendship. Like, it's not just platonic love. It's like a deep, your soul loves this person's soul, but not in a sexual way. And it was so touching to read and to see them go through this harrowing experience together. And it's really got a strong female character who isn't like punching people. So if you're into seeing female power displayed in a way that's not based on male power tropes, this is a great book for that. It's also just really fast paced, really interesting and intricate and beautiful. And I really hope that you give this a try, and also give Alif the Unseen a try, because they're both fantastic. And this might be another one of my favorite authors ever. So those are all of my books that I have at my top of my list of 2019. It was a pretty good reading year for me. I did read a lot of books that I really loved. But yeah, I hope you guys also had a great reading year, and I hope 2020 is also awesome for you. And I am looking forward to it. And I will see you next time. Be sure to subscribe and comment below. What was your favorite book in 2019? Thanks.